Hey, what's up guys, WSRX here, or Noah Clark, and today I'm going to be doing your setup and hot lap guide for the Suzuka circuit for this weekend's Singapore Grand Prix. We're in the closing rounds of the championship, and this is a lot of people's favorite track, but it's also a really difficult track, so this should be a good one, and I think it's going to help a lot of people out. Before we get to the actual hot lap, which is going to be performed by Sweet Crown 19, your current championship leader, actually very close to securing the championship, we're going to get to the setup, and we're just going to walk you through it and give you some basic pointers on why he chose this setup and why we also recommend this setup. Of course, you can't adjust fuel load in time trials. Aerodynamics are going for 4, front wing and rear wing is at 6. Not a huge amount of downforce necessary. The center S's are deceptive. For downforce, you think, oh, I need a lot of downforce here because the car's not gripping. If the car's not gripping, it's because you took too much speed in there and you're turning way too hard and the traction is off and everything. So all you really need to worry about is that you're managing your braking correctly through the center S's and just making sure that you're not overdoing it into turns and overdoing it on the throttle out of exits, because that's really what hurts a lot of people in that section. And quite frankly, most of the circuit is generally pretty easy. It's a few sections. One of them is the hairpin after the S's, close to after the S's, and then there's also the actual S's themselves, and those areas usually mess people up the most. So downforce is not super necessary. Of course, we do have a little bit run on here, but there's a lot of main straights as well, especially on the back and through 130R. So you want to be careful not to put too much downforce, and it can really ruin your straight line speed on those areas, and that will cost you a little bit of a tenth. But again, it's really about controlling your braking through the S section. That will help you gain so much time on your overall lap times. We have 60% on throttle and 70% off throttle for the differential adjustment. And this is pretty much straightforward. Not too much to explain here. Suspension geometry, same thing. 250 on the front. Rear camber, minus 250 on front as well. And the front and rear toe are at 0.05 and 0.20 respectively. Pretty standard suspension geometry. A lot of circuits carry this kind of suspension geometry. So this is not a, obscure build. Suzuka is not obscure. Really, it's a lot of technique in your driving, not so much the setup. The setup does matter, of course, but things like suspension geometry, especially with a lot of tracks, are pretty much exactly the same. You'll see a lot of these suspension geometry setups. Moving on to the suspension, front suspension and rear suspension at 4 and 3. So we have them generally pretty soft. There's a few areas where you do want to be doing that because it can get a little bumpy, and the soft suspension is going to be able to take that significantly better. Front anti-roll bar is at 4. The rear anti-roll bar is at 10, so substantially on the rear. And the ride height is 3 at the front and 4 at the rear. For brake pressure, we have 85% brake pressure, and front brake bias is at 55%, so we've left that. Well, we've increased both of them, but we've put them a little close to each other in balance. But front brake bias is going to be a little higher. A lot of these corners require a lot of hard braking, and you want to get the front of your car pointed correctly. So that is why we have front brake bias so high, and the brake pressure, of course, also quite high. You want to be braking hard for some of these turns, especially the hairpins. Having the brake pressure too low, you're just going to really be understeering through a lot of corners, and it's going to lose you a bucket load of time. Front tire pressure, again, we have that a little higher. Again, we want to point the car towards the right direction, and as well, front tire pressure is going to be a little higher because we don't want to be warming up those fronts nearly as much. This is, again, tire wear kind of thing as well, partially as well. You don't want to be warming up your fronts nearly as much, so you want to have a little bit less rubber on the ground. The rear tire pressure, 21.5, that's not going to be much of an issue. The fronts of your car, the front tires of your car are really what's going to struggle during a race and even during a lap. The rear tires are not going to be playing too much of an effect, really, with especially the center S's and a few other turns on this track. Getting the car pointed in the right direction before you move forward is really crucial to setting up a good lap. So that's the setup, and that should help you a little bit. But again, a lot of this is driver technique, as we're about to see, as we're going to go through Sweet Crown 19's lap, and we're going to go through the important parts you need to remember so that you can get fast around the Suzuka circuit for the Japanese Grand Prix. Let's move over to the lap. Alright guys, starting the lap now, coming up onto the start-finish straight, you're going to bring it all the way up to 8th gear. You're going to maximize your speed going into turn 1. Turn 1 is actually flat before you let off a little bit and brake going into turn 2. All the way down to 4th gear, up to now 6th gear onto the S's. And again, this is all about managing your braking and managing your throttle. Don't stop and go on your braking, because that's going to kill your flow. And flow is all that matters around these S's. Once you get that down, you're good to go. Managing out of the S's, don't give it too much, you'll go off. Now, dabbing on the brake for this turn before hard braking for the next turn, you're done with Sector 1. Going through the underpass of the bridge. Now, going up to that hairpin we've been talking about, hard braking. Sweet Crown actually locks its brakes, and that's fine. You're better to lock your brakes than to go wide on that hairpin, because you're going to lose so much time. Now, again, coming up to a few turns that are much like the S's. You're just going to manage your braking and manage your throttle, making sure you're not giving it too much throttle and making sure you're not braking too hard where you kill the flow. Flow is very important on this track. Now on the main straight, up through 8th gear, you're about to come to 130R. This is a completely flat turn, though. Listen to that little blip on the driving line. Coming up to the chicane, braking just at about the 100-meter board before going all the way down the 2nd gear through the final little chicane before finishing your lap off at the Suzuka circuit for the Japanese Grand Prix. We're just going to show you guys the setup, again, that we've chosen. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Make sure to like and subscribe the video if you enjoyed it. My name is WSRX or Noah Clark. Make sure to tune in for the Japanese Grand Prix at 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on Sunday. Thank you very much, and have yourselves a great day.